Two so-called HOA cops marched up to a woman's own front yard, handcuffed her and called her a trespasser in front of the whole neighborhood. But what they didn't know, this woman wasn't just any homeowner. She was an off-duty police captain, and when the truth came out, their entire scheme crumbled. Alicia James had spent 20 years on the force. She'd seen the worst humanity could offer: gang shootouts, corruption scandals, violent standoffs. But after climbing the ranks, she'd become one of the youngest police captains in the state. To her neighbors in the suburban development of Oakwood Hills, however, Alicia was just the new homeowner, polite, reserved, and always carrying herself with calm confidence. She had bought her house with pride. A wraparound porch, tidy garden, and oak trees that reminded her of her childhood. To Alicia, it wasn't just property. It was a promise of peace. But in Oakwood Hills, peace came at a price and controlled by the HOA. The HOA was run by a smug man named Gregory Haskell. Gregory was a self-proclaimed protector of neighborhood standards, but in reality, he was a bully in a suit. He thrived on control, issuing fines for the smallest infractions, shaming homeowners at meetings, and acting as though the HOA had more authority than the law itself. And when Alicia moved in, Gregory didn't like her. Maybe it was her confidence. Maybe it was her independence. Or maybe, just maybe, it was because she didn't bow to his intimidation. So Gregory devised a plan. If he couldn't scare Alicia with letters and fines, he'd humiliate her. And that's when he created his fake HOA police unit. It was a Saturday afternoon. Children rode bikes, sprinklers hissed, and Alicia had just returned from picking up groceries. She parked in her driveway, humming softly, when suddenly, two men in tactical vests approached her. Their patches read, "Community HOA Police." One barked, "Ma'am, step away from the property." "You're trespassing." Alicia froze. "Trespassing? This is my home." The taller man smirked. "Not according to our records. You're illegally occupying this property. You'll need to come with us." Before she could react, they pulled out handcuffs. Neighbors stopped to watch. Phones came out. Whispers filled the air. "Did she break in?" "Maybe she doesn't really live there." And then, click, cold steel closed around her wrists. Most people would panic. Most would shout, cry, or resist, but Alicia, she stayed calm. Her breathing slowed. Her eyes sharpened. Because Alicia had spent 2 decades training herself for moments like this, she leaned forward slightly and whispered to the impostors, "You boys just made the biggest mistake of your lives." They laughed. "Save it for the judge." But as they dragged her toward the curb, Alicia twisted her wrist just enough to press the emergency button on her smartwatch, a silent distress signal that pinged the police precinct. Help was already on the way. Minutes later, real police cruisers screeched into the neighborhood. Sirens wailed. Red and blue lights flashed across manicured lawns. Hands in the air. "Drop the cuffs!" shouted an officer. The fake HOA cops froze, their smug faces draining of color. Neighbors gasped. The entire street went silent, except for the sound of engines rumbling. An officer rushed to Alicia, removing the cuffs. She stepped forward, adjusted her jacket, and pulled out a badge. Her voice cut through the silence like a blade. "I'm Captain Alicia James, and you're under arrest." The crowd erupted. Phones shook as people recorded the scene. The impostors were slammed to the ground, cuffed, and shoved into the back of real police cruisers. The neighbors who had doubted her now stood speechless. The investigation revealed everything. Gregory Haskell, the HOA president, had hired the impostors, paying them to pose as HOA police and humiliate Alicia. He thought if she was embarrassed enough, she'd move out. But now Gregory faced charges of conspiracy, harassment, and impersonation of law enforcement. The impostors were charged with unlawful detention, impersonating officers, and assault, and the HOA, it crumbled under lawsuits, investigations, and a wave of angry homeowners who realized they'd been bullied for years. Headlines filled the local news. Fake HOA cops arrest off-duty police captain. HOA president behind impersonation scandal. The once powerful Gregory was forced to resign in disgrace. His smug smile was replaced with a mugshot. Meanwhile, Alicia's calm strength turned her into a local hero. Parents told their children about the woman who stood her ground. Neighbors apologized for doubting her, and for the first time in years, the HOA had no power. Weeks later, Alicia sat on her porch with a cup of tea. Birds chirped. The sun dipped low. A neighbor approached timidly, carrying flowers. "Captain James, we're sorry for what happened. We're lucky to have you here." Alicia smiled faintly. She hadn't bought this house to be a hero. She had only wanted peace. But when the HOA tried to take her dignity, she stood firm and revealed the truth. Power built on lies never lasts. Arrogance can dress itself in uniforms and badges, but the truth always strips it bare. The HOA thought fear was power. They thought intimidation could win. But real authority doesn't come from fake patches or cheap badges. It comes from integrity, courage, and justice. And when Alicia revealed she was a police captain, their empire of lies collapsed in seconds.